So it's a great pleasure to welcome you all for this webinar and European Data Protection Seal Lessons Learned with Allianz. So it's a great pleasure, a great honor, and great pleasure to welcome our excellent panel of experts that I will introduce in a few minutes. Let me just introduce briefly the agenda of this webinar. So we will have a short introduction. Then I will give the floor to Michael Will to present the perspective from the supervisory authorities, a little bit what the importance, how, why, and what is the relevance of a European seal. I will then give a brief introduction about the European seal, Europrivacy, how it works and what are the main components. Then we'll have the great pleasure to give the floor to Philipp Raether from Allianz, VP of Allianz, who will share the experience of Allianz with the European seal and give you, maybe share with you some lessons learned, some perspectives. Why is it important? What does it mean for an adopter, a data controller, a data processor? And then we have the pleasure also to have Zoltan Temesi from TAM CERT, who will present the perspective of the certification body, and we should have some time for Q&A. So as introduced, the great pleasure to have Dr. Philipp Raether, who is Group Chief Privacy Officer at Allianz, Michael Will, who is the President of the Bavarian Data Protection Authority for the private sector. I will have the pleasure and the honor to chair and to participate in these presentations, and Dr. Zoltan Temesi, Lead Auditor at TAM CERT. General information, so this webinar is recorded to be made available online. You can ask questions through the Q&A feature, which enables, the participants can ask questions through the Q&A feature. We'll try to address these questions at the end of the webinar. When we or you are not speaking, we invite you to switch off your microphone. And again, a general disclaimer, the content of the webinar is provided for information purpose and is not intended to be legally or contractually binding, except otherwise stated. The information provided by speakers and experts are provided in their personal capacity and do not necessarily represent the official position of the respective affiliation, just so that everybody feels comfortable and can express his views. So let me, without any further ado, propose to Michael, if you agree, to start by sharing some perspective and views on what means GDPR certification, what is the relevance, why should finally a SME, a company, consider engaging in this exercise, which requires a certain effort. What does it mean from the perspective of supervisory authority and from the perspective of the regulation?
Thanks a lot. First of all, thanks a lot for having me here, for the invitation, which was, of course, a little bit on short time. That's why I beg you for excuse that I've not prepared any slides, that you have only to listen and hopefully share my point of views. I would like to split a little bit, because as you may know, my life had different stages in data protection. I had the opportunity to accompany GDPR negotiations in the council from the very beginning, from 2012 until the end. And so sometimes I'm a little bit, I tend to live in the past. I have not the classical role and perspective of a regulator that I am today. That means, from a more or less systematic point of view, certification is something great in GDPR. It's completely within the systematic concept of GDPR, because GDPR is not about bureaucracy, as we discussed today. It's about self-regulation. And so certification is the appropriate methodology to approve by controllers, by processors themselves, that they are in line with GDPR's expectations, with GDPR's requirements. This is the starting point. This also gives the opportunity to develop certification schemes that are adapted to the needs of business, whatever they need. Authorities tend to have another focus on the way they try to enforce GDPR. We are more or less driven by the situation of complaints. What means that, at least for my office, and I hear that from many of my European colleagues, more or less 80% of our workload is clearly focused on negotiating, on deciding on complaints. And so I'm sometimes a little bit afraid that we don't get around with another important task to advise controllers and processors on how to apply GDPR. And there, certification, yes, opportunities jump in and give the industry the possibility to prove that their idea of how to apply GDPR for their specific processing activity is working and is in line with fundamental expectations. The backdrop of all that is completely clear for you. We are not talking about self-regulation as it is alone. We have regulated self-regulations. That means that there are sometimes authorities in place and make sure that all the principles and the fundamentals of certification are at the end more or less in line with their own expectations. So this is the more or less principal approach, the academia perspective, and now my reality as a regulator. As a regulator, I'm a little bit struggling, and the case today is proving that situation in many aspects, because I'm happy that Allianz did that, what they will introduce later, but I did nothing for them to get there. My role was more or less the role of Maria, Holy Mother, when she received the notice that there would be the birth of Jesus in by her support, because we as Allianz lead authority had no specific role in this procedure. This is not something I would criticize, but this is something to make you clear what is my contribution to all these successes that are now on the table. That's something we regret, of course, at the end in a more holistic perspective, because we would like to contribute more to this factor or to this success of certifications, because it gives industries, as I already described, a good opportunity to to convince people that all that they are doing is trustworthy. And this is something I'm missing today a little bit. This is the general perspective at last before I come to an end. I have sometimes concerns that today people don't really understand what GDPR means. They confuse it with certain ideas and sometimes even stories that no one who is really a data protection specialist should believe, but those stories remain. And so I think we all should contribute a little bit more to the story of what is the value of GDPR, and the value is clear trust and control. And that's why I'm rather happy to be here and now listen to all the efforts you did in the probably last months or years, I don't know, and see what was the basis for all that I have now or can now only welcome and congratulate.
Thank you very much, Michael. I think it's, as you mentioned, it's a lot of effort. So let's now dive a little bit more into the details and then to engage in some Q&A after. So let me start already by a short introduction on of the European seal. First of all, the European Centre for Certification on Privacy, just to say a few words, was born in the context of the European Research Programme. And the main ambition of the European Centre is to bridge the research community with the needs of the market from a regulatory compliance and certification perspectives. The European Centre is focusing a lot on regulatory compliance. You have here a view, an overview of the different data regulation related to the digital sector in Europe. So the approved regulation, the upcoming regulations, the ones which are still in draft. It gives an overview of the width of the EU regulations, current and upcoming regulations in the field of digital transformation. And in this context, what we try to do is fundamentally to leverage on the European research community to bring solutions to the table that helps assessing compliance with the regulation, that helps assessing regulatory compliance, reducing the risk for the data subjects, for all the parties. And one of the important achievements was the approval and adoption of Europrivacy as official European Data Protection Seal under Article 42, which has been approved by EDPB, but also by European accreditation for the accreditability purpose or process. And the European Data Protection Seal is a very important instrument in the context of the GDPR, because there are over 70 references to certification in the GDPR, far more than any other mechanism or instruments, for instance, the instrument of Article 46. And if we look at, and I will come back after, at the characteristic of the certification, it's again an instrument which is quite apart from other instruments. The scheme is managed by an international board of experts that I have the pleasure to chair, which gathers different experts from different countries of Europe, a professor of law faculties, experts in certification in cybersecurity, who are collectively monitoring, maintaining the scheme. And the idea of this board is also to ensure that if there is any evolution in the regulation or in the jurisprudence or in the soft law, that the criteria and the schemes are continuously monitored to avoid any gap. And then the scheme is made available for free to qualified organizations, so companies, implementers, can be law firms, consulting companies, to certification bodies and solution providers, which will facilitate the documentation of data processing with their solution. So the scheme and the resources are made available for free to qualified partners. So the European Centre itself does not deliver certification, does not deliver consulting services, but it makes the scheme available to other entities that will deliver this service, one of them being TAM CERT, who is acting as one of the officially recognized certification body. And these different organizations or stakeholders will help implementing and supporting the implementation of the scheme. So now maybe one element which can be interesting, which is a general perspective of the importance of certification and European data protection seal in the context of the GDPR. If you look at the different articles of the GDPR, you will see that certification is mentioned quite a number of times. So for instance, it's the only instrument which is mentioned under Article 25 to demonstrate data protection by design and by default, which is often, by the way, an article which is not always easy to address, or which raise questions from SMEs in particular to know how can we ensure that we can demonstrate privacy by design or data protection by design by default. But you will see also that certification is recognized as an adequate means to demonstrate the adequacy of data controllers under Article 24, like Code of Conduct. It's also recognized as an adequate mechanism or instrument to demonstrate the adequacy of selected data processors under Article 28. And that's quite important because anytime you share data with another entity, with a data processor, the data controller keeps and remains liable for any wrongdoing by the data processor, which is a very smart and important mechanism of the GDPR. And again, certification is recognized by the GDPR as an adequate means to demonstrate compliance of the technical and organizational measures set in place by the data processor. It's again mentioned under Article 32 for the security of data processing. It is also an instrument which is, I would say, industry agnostic. In principle, you can have schemes which are industry specific, but otherwise, it is, in the case, for instance, of Europrivacy, it's completely industry agnostic. So you can use in different industries. It is also something very interesting. I will come back to this in a few minutes. For companies who adopt certification for DPO, for compliance officers, it's a way also to value the compliance. And we'll come back to this in a few minutes. And becomes an intangible asset for the company. So a way, again, to make compliance a source of value creation for the company. Then you have the possibility to select and focus on such specific data processing. It is taken into account under Article 83 in case of administrative fines and so on. Now, why do SMEs or companies usually consider certification, GDPR certification? The first element, I would say, at least in the case of Europrivacy, it has been designed really to enable companies to identify potential blind spots in the compliance, to identify and reduce legal and financial risk and reputational risk, but to be sure that as a DPO, we think that, okay, we have done the things right. And then using the criteria as a way to check and to ensure that we are really not missing or ignoring any one of the obligations. So you can use the criteria indeed without a certification, just to check your compliance. Then it enables to check and demonstrate the compliance with the GDPR, as stated in Article 42 and Recital 100, to improve reputation, access to market, to build trust and confidence. Let me say a few words about it. We realized that, so we started the research on Europrivacy, for your information, more than 12 years ago, so before the GDPR, under the previous directives, through different European research projects. And then we really developed the methodology to enable different data control and processors to assess the compliance and to check to ensure that they are not missing any one of the obligations of the GDPR. And indeed, it's really, you realize that we really have these two phases. One is to build trust with third parties, but another one, and which is as much important, it seems, as the first one, is to build confidence, to enable companies, DPOs, or the different stakeholders of a company to ensure that they are doing the things right. They're on the right side of the, driving on the right side of the road. And that's something very important. The possibility to extend compliance to other regulations. I will maybe say a few words at the end, but the structure of the scheme has been designed to enable the possibility to add additional criteria to assess either complementary obligations with other EU regulations like e-privacy directives, Data Act, Data Governance Acts, or others, or potentially with additional complementary national obligations. Let's imagine you want to certify your compliance with the GDPR, but you have a company active with other non-EU markets, let's say UK, Switzerland, in Japan, Canada. We have also a complementary criteria that you can add to the core criteria for the GDPR certification to assess also the compliance with complementary obligations. Develop competitive advantage. I think that's something common to many certifications. Turn compliance into value and revenue and value creation, to ease cross-border processor data transfer, receive continuous regulatory updates, and last but not least, is to have a certification which is legally recognized by not only the EU, by the 30 EU and EEA member states, which means that for data protection authorities from all these countries, European data protection seal will be recognized as valuable and meaningful certification to demonstrate compliance. A little parenthesis, under GDPR, you can also have national certification, which in this case can be approved at national level with an interaction with the EDPB, but then would be recognized in the national country, in the specific country where it has been approved. The European seal had the benefit to be recognized by all EU and EE authorities, which is quite an important effort. So how does it work? What does an applicant need to be certified? Very briefly, fundamentally, it's to comply with the regulation. That's what the criteria have been designed for. It's not to create additional requirements, very much to focus on can we assess and can we demonstrate with clear evidence that the data processing activity is complying with the GDPR, or that the controller or processor of a data processing activity is complying with the GDPR. So fundamentally, you need to ensure that you comply with the regulation, with the law. Then you need to have also something which is mandatory for the certification, but not always mandatory under GDPR. You need to have a DPO. It can be an external DPO, but we consider that we cannot deliver a valuable certification if there's nobody in charge of the compliance. So we expect that any applicant under the scheme has a DPO, either internal or external DPO. In other words, there must be someone in charge of the compliance in the company or for the company. Second requirements, we need also, the applicant needs to have a record of data processing activities. Again, it's required for large companies, not always for small. But again, the idea was, when we discussed with the board of experts, was really to say, it's not reliable to deliver certification to an entity which does not know what personal data it is processing. So again, the idea of the record of data processing activities is fundamentally to ensure that an applicant knows what's happening under its responsibility in terms of personal data. And then finally, it's to document your compliance with the officially approved criteria. The good news also for GDPR certification is that there was some discussions at the very beginning to see if EDPB or DG Justice would consider management system certification at the level of a company. And this was declined. And the rationale behind it was to say it's too high level. It will not be trustable. I mean, a certification must be more focused on the data processing themselves to really be meaningful, at least what we understood from the authorities, which leads to two benefits. I think the first one is that you have a certification which is far more reliable, in particular if you want to trust a certification in a B2B relationship, you know that this certification is meaningful because it's really addressing the reality of the data processing, not general procedure at the level of a company. And the second element, the good news in particular for SMEs, it enables to put first things first and to focus on the priority data processing and to say, okay, what are the data processing where we identify the major risks for the data subjects, or where we identify the major reputational risk, and then you can identify, focus on them, work on them, certify them, and then you can progressively extend it to other data processing. So there's a very flexible approach to ensure compliance. Then how does it work? As I mentioned, the first stage is to comply with the regulation. Then you check and document your compliance by documenting the compliance with the criteria, which enables already to bring a benefit to the company or to the SMEs by reducing the risks, because by documenting the compliance, you may identify non-conformity that were not obvious or blind spots in your compliance. And that enables already to reduce the risk even before the certification occurs. Then when you certify, the idea is that by certifying, you turn your compliance into a source of value creation, into something valuable, something you can communicate, something that is recognized by third parties. And then finally, you maintain, and the idea is to make it really enjoyable. Again, the whole philosophy for Europrivacy and for the European Center is to find a way to make compliance as natural and as user-friendly as possible. And then what is very interesting, if you look at the effort for the company, most of the effort is done to comply with the regulation. That's where you need to adapt the procedures, you need to document, you need to For instance, to hire a DPO, you need to do a certain number of actions to ensure that you comply with the GDPR. What is very interesting that indeed the certification is a kind of natural continuation. It's not a new venture. It's not a new mountain to climb. Most of the work is already behind you once you are ready to start the certification. Then when you document your compliance, what is very interesting that you are so reducing the risk. So you already give an incentive, particularly for SMEs, for which sometimes certification may be a huge investment or huge effort. And then once you certify, you start valuing the compliance. So fundamentally, I would say certification is an amazing instrument under GDPR to turn compliance into value, to not only economic value, but also economic value, value creation, but also value in the companies, because it's a way to structure the compliance, to have clear benchmarks, reference, and to recognize also the work of the DPO and the compliance officers, which is sometimes not regarded as much as it should be, because we often turn to the DPO when there is an issue, and we don't see all the good work that the DPO does, which leads to the fact that the company has no major issue, fortunately, if it's doing the things correctly. There is also the idea was to make it user-friendly, so we have a whole set of resources. I will not dive into the detail of it, but we have a public website, we have an online academy, we have an online community and resource website where you find all the resources, FAQ, templates to help. There is this ecosystem of official partners, which is amazing because we have fortunately managed to be supported. We got the support from the largest law firms, consulting firms, certification bodies, and solution providers. And these partners are supporting the entities in the market who would like to get support. Our role as European Center is mainly to focus on our role as scheme owner to maintain the scheme, to ensure that it's always up to date, that it is addressing the evolution of the regulation of the law, and further developing the criteria, while the official partners are really available to support. And then companies can choose either to solicit the support of official partners. They can do it by themselves. There's also the possibility to prepare. The only thing that can never be done by oneself is a certification. At the end of the day, you will always need at least to have a certification body to come and to deliver the certification. We have order support like welcome packs and orders. Another thing that can be considered by companies, if they don't have the resource to engage in certification, what they can do at least is already to request and to request their service providers to be certified, because that's a very powerful mechanism to reduce the risk for the data controller. It doesn't exclude the risk, but it reduces the risk in the sense that being a data controller working with certified service providers reduces the risk of the liability or the potential effect in terms of incident or problems on the service provider sides for the data controller. That's it for the scheme. So I hope it gave a good overview. And now I would like to give the floor to Philipp Raether, who is Chief DPO for Allianz, and to tell us more why and how and what are the lessons learned. Philipp, the floor is yours.
Perfect. Thank you, Sébastien, for the invitation and also running the scheme. Very honored to be here. And for those on the call who don't know Allianz, we are the world's biggest insurer, but also asset manager. So we have, over 120 million customer data, but also 160,000 employees. So quite a lot of data, with Allianz. And if we can go to the next slide, please, for me. Yep. Would be great. And next slide. So obviously, at the beginning, what Sébastien said, we as a business thought, what about a certification? Is that really something we want to do? Because obviously it will cost time and money, right? And, you know, as Michael already said, it's not, you know, a requirement by, you know, the regulator, by GDPR. It's an add-on, right? And, you know, with our board, you always have to come, you know, what is the business value, right? And, you know, an organization like Allianz, who's very customer-centric, customer friendly, we thought about thinking about our customers. And actually, we did this survey in Germany. We asked, you know, many, you see 350 participants, Allianz customers or non-customers, what does such a, you know, seal do for you? And, you know, I don't find it surprising, but then you have the scientific data. Over 80% of insurance customers, but also non-customers, find that from extremely relevant to relevant, right? So, you know, the thing is, if you even go over compliance, it is really worthwhile. And you also have to put it in the shoes of the customers, but also employees. You know, we digitalize more and more people's going online. Yet, is it very sensitive? You know, we have health insurance, you have accident data, so you have to make it really safe. And with that seal, like Europrivacy, we can really demonstrate it. And Sébastien, you have said it, and this the first really purpose of the seal, it's about the trust of the customers, right? So do they really entrust Allianz, you know, their sensitive data also online? And with that Europrivacy seal, you know, we can say, yes, we are trustworthy, and we've demonstrated that, right? But then the second part, and this on the next slide, is, and you've also said that, Sébastien, you know, it is getting even better at, you know, privacy compliance. And Michael, you said you don't have a stake in here, yes, but you do, right? If you see now the list of at least what Allianz has done, is also part of, thanks to your advice and guidance, and also of your authority, Michael. You know, we had a big GDPR project implementation. Then, with the help of the Bavarian authority, you know, we got the binding corporate rules approved. We also, there is something called the Dow Jones Sustainability Index. This is mainly for investors, and therefore data privacy, you know, we have 100 out of 100 points for 3 consecutive years. So this is really good. We do internal, external audits, right? In Germany, we also had another certification. It's from the TÜV. So lots of things already going. But with the Europrivacy seal, you know, being now a official seal according to Article 42, we said, okay, let's put that on top, right? And then, you know, Zoltan, you came in with certifiers. I'm going to go into the details. But the thing is, you know, although we were very good at data privacy compliance, there were quite a few things, you know, where we had a blind spot, and your, you know, TAM's, the Hungarian certifiers view, really helped us to get even better. So it was a really worthwhile exercise. But then what did we do exactly on the next slide? So you can appreciate Allianz is really huge. You know, we're in over 70 countries. We have hundreds of products. So certainly you cannot get the seal for all and everything in the beginning. So our logic was, you know, we go for a very big subsidiary, which is in the middle, Italy, our Italian subsidiary. For a smaller one, which is the Austrian to the left. And, you know, HR data is also very important. That's on the right-hand side. We looked at the global reporting, recruiting process. So basically, you know, is our applicants' data and the processing as such, data privacy compliance. Then in the subsidiary, again, you're not just certifying the whole subsidiary. You have to look at special data processing, right? And this is now for special insurance products like P&C, property and casualty. So this is car insurance and so on, health insurance, but also life and home insurance. And, you know, in Italy, it was more the underwriting and sales process, the claims process, and our business intelligence platforms. That is actually, you know, where we got for these 7 parts of the business, we got the Europrivacy certification. Then on the next slide, a little bit to the process. So you can see we already started the process in 2023, and we did a pre-assessment, you know, to look at that, you know, are we now calling for a certifier? Are we mature enough? And, you know, that pre-assessment really concluded, yes, we can do it, let's go for it. And then in 2024, we selected a certifier. And as Sébastien said, there are now a few, right? Back then it was fewer, but now there are more certifiers, and you as a company just have to select one, right? Zoltan, that's why we established the relationship and said, yeah, TAM in Hungary should be our certifier. And then in July 24, we started the certification, you know, starting with lots of interviews with TAM, where you also collected all the evidence. And that then followed by a very intense technical and legal audit presenting evidences, right? And, you know, lots of discussion, really good ones where we also learned from you. And, you know, then you also identified a couple of issues which we remediated. And now in February, so basically last month, you know, we got the certificates, very nice handover ceremony in Munich, right, Zoltan, where you also came with the colleagues and representative of you know, the subsidiaries, and with our board member, the chief operating officer. We had a very nice celebration where, you know, also our chief executive saw really could witness this was worthwhile making the investment. So to conclude on that, right? So really, if you're now listening, you know, from a company, I really can recommend it. It's really worth the effort, you know, to be recognized internally, externally, you know, get the trust up, get issues remediated. What you may have to consider is really the scoping, right? What you want to go certified, and where the journey starts, right? And then also consider a little bit the language thing, right? We have Hungarians, we had Italians, Austrians, right? We all meet in English, but then you have to appreciate documents will have to be translated. That's something. And if you want to do it right, I would say start as early as possible. And it's really worthwhile. I can fully subscribe it. And, you know, also for Allianz, this is a starting of the journey. So we have a very big conference next month where we also promote this with more subsidiaries and say with Allianz, we can get even more certifications, and hopefully that will be picked up then. So, and we're looking forward to this journey. So with that, thank you, and back to you, Sébastien.
Thank you very much, Philippe. And as you mentioned, it was interesting to see the journey and the continuity and continuation of the compliance effort made by Allianz, and quite admirable. Let me now pass the floor to Zoltan. You as a certification body, if you could share with us a little bit what is the process, and if you have some lessons learned or suggestions for those who may be interested to embrace the same journey.
Thank you. More than happy to do so. And thank you very much for having me here. And I really appreciate, and it's a privilege to be here and also to be part of the Allianz audit, which was, it was quite a journey. It was quite an experience for us as well. Those of who do not know me, I'm a lawyer specialized in European law, data security and data protection. I'm a Europrivacy auditor and the lead auditor at TAM CERT, which is the first certification body that was granted accreditation to conduct Europrivacy audits. If I'm not mistaken, the accreditation was finished in 2023, end of 2023. And last year we started our first audits. And if you let me, I won't just talk about the Allianz audit, but our experience in this whole year of all these procedures, and of course I will talk about a bit about the Allianz project as well. So first of all, it's almost a year since the first certification was issued to PwC Luxembourg, but since then we have been processing with other audits, and I must say that we consider ourselves very lucky because the first applicants showed very high level of awareness and readiness, so that made our work easier. But we also learned that some prospective applicants or interested parties are not as ready as others, and that revealed some general weaknesses that should be considered when someone is thinking about starting with Europrivacy audit journey. In our experience, probably one of the most crucial points can be the understanding of the Europrivacy criteria. And if you let me, Sébastien, I just refer to what you said earlier, that there are several companies that comply more or less with the GDPR requirements, but probably one of the first lessons to be learned is that Europrivacy is not just about the GDPR compliance, but it's much more. It's an opportunity to not just in terms of marketing, but also in terms of corporate governance, and that's why Europrivacy sets even a higher standard than the GDPR, and that should be understood by applicants or prospective applicants, that even if they think they are compliant with the GDPR rules, this does not automatically mean that they are compliant with the Europrivacy requirements. They need a higher degree of awareness to comply the Europrivacy audit. And this is a principle, but this is also reflected in the actual checks and controls in the checklists. And if an applicant is not aware of that, he might be surprised when he is faced with a very deep and sophisticated audit process, as we follow the Europrivacy standards. So probably that's one of the main points what we experienced. Other thing is the need of the preparation, as Philipp just underlined. It is a crucial part, and it cannot be overestimated how much importance, how important is the task of the implementers. Probably competent implementers can help applicants to be ready for the audit, and it not just saves time of the audit, but it also saves money for them as well. So although it is quite obvious, but still it must be stressed that the preparation is a key. And from these two comes probably the third experience is that the clear definition of the TOE is the scope of the audit, which is prior to the actual audit process is also very important and cannot be skipped. If you don't have a clearer and precise definition of the TOEs, then we won't be able to succeed with an audit, and that should be understood by the applicants. And the fourth is the operational readiness of the applicants. It's not just about the technical thing, but also allocating adequate personnel and adequate, not just lawyers, not just the DPO, but also IT staff, because those are needed to the audit as well. So it is very important. And of course, if we talk about the Allianz audit, we didn't have an issue with that. We had a very capable and very aware personnel from Allianz, and it helped us a lot. It was the audit itself took a bit more than a half a year, but it was not because of Allianz was not ready for the audit, rather because the scope, the TOEs were covering quite a complex data processing activities. We had three, as it was mentioned, we had 3 countries, 4 companies, 7 TOEs, and breaking down the TOEs, we identified over 30 sub-activities that had to be checked individually. We were basically facing with a very complex data processing activities, with high quantity of special data included. So that was the challenge. In our team, we had several legal experts and technical experts, but we were lucky because Allianz teams in our counterparts were adequate number and expertise. They're very competent in terms of the GDPR and also in corporate governance, which was also crucial, as Allianz, being a huge multinational organization, has a very high degree of internal governance, meaning that the internal policy structure is very sophisticated and detailed. So it was good to get a competent guide to be able to effectively navigate through their internal regulation environment. And that helped us a lot. And I cannot stress hard enough that the cooperation on Allianz side helped us to proceed as quickly as possible and as effectively as possible. Basically, and what are the takeaways? I should underline that what I just mentioned, that understanding and communicating the high standards of Europrivacy is very important to prospective applicants. Also, the importance of the preparation, importance of the implementers and their work is also crucial to have a quick and smooth audit, and building a mutual understanding of the actual scope of the audit beforehand is also evidently very important. So basically, that's all what I plan to say, and thank you again for Philipp for this very good cooperation we had, and also having me here today.
Thank you very much, Zoltan. I think you mentioned something quite interesting, the importance of defining the TOE, target of evaluation. And perhaps allow me to come back to Philipp, because I guess considering the number of data processing in Allianz, how did you determine what TOE to address first? What was the rationale, the logic? Because I guess you had a very large number of data processing that could have been addressed. So what was the rationale? If you have some, again, suggestions on how to best approach this decision.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good question. Sébastien, we want to make it relevant, from a customer view. And obviously, then they care about their data being processed when they buy insurance, right? So, not some back office or, other. It's really when you as a customer give to Allianz their data. And similarly, the other one was the applicant journey, right? When you're an applicant, you're sending very sensitive data to, company you might work for. And then you also want to know it's in safe hands, right?
Very interesting. Any suggestion on how to specify the TOE based on your experience?
Yeah, and the other dimension was, if you big group of company, many international subsidiaries, you can't do all. You have to pick some, and we picked a very big one and a small one, right? But each one might have a different, approach. Maybe some companies are, picking their global and their digital entity versus a less digital one, right? But I mean, we have to be clear, right? And Zoltan also elaborate that it's quite a lot of work, right? And you have to pick your areas. You can't start now with everything if you're a bigger company.
Michael, from your perspective, when you see the achievements, what is your, I would say, own perspective and vision? Because you have a long career before joining as commissioner. So how do you see the relevance and of such approach in terms of certification?
Yes, you're touching a more or less sad point. We are celebrating today, but looking general at the situation of certifications under GDPR, the picture is not as beautiful. There are only some flowers that are growing, and we are admiring one today, of course, but there should be more projects like this flourishing. And that means I'm wondering on the one hand a little bit, why? What are the reasons? Maybe you, Sébastien, or Zoltan might explain a little bit about the difficulties, how to get to that point today. And on the other hand, I'm a little bit, of course, optimistic at the end that we now got a starting point, that projects like us, like this here, are more or less a point to see that it's doable at the end, and that you can come, even if you have a complex organization as Philipp has, to a solid certification of these core activities. Because what Philipp explained right now is that he has applied a risk-based approach. He has looked for the processing activities with the greatest risks for data subjects. And that means that's not the easy way. This is, of course, important when it comes to trust, but there are many, many crucial questions in place, and nevertheless, it worked. So I'm a little bit wondering what will be the picture in, let's say, 3 years. Will we have more Europrivacy applications, which would be nice for you, but even will there be others that do the same race and are able to contribute a little bit to show organizations how to stay compliant in a rather complex world? I'm really with you, Sébastien, that you showed the picture of our friend Kai Senner, what means at the end certifications are one of the key elements in this European digital landscape in the future. And that's why I'm a little bit hoping that we are proving with GDPR that it's, again, feasible.
Yeah, absolutely. And you raised a very good question. Indeed, as I mentioned, we started more than 12 years ago to work on it. So research-wise, we worked first on the previous directive, Data Protection Directive, and then we followed the adoption of the GDPR and further developed the methodology and the scheme and get it ready already by 2018. But then back then, when the CNPD, the Luxembourgish authority, brought it to EDPB, EDPB was not ready. And they replied to CNPD, okay, listen, we have so many things to organize, so many elements on orders that come back later. And then they came back later in 2020 that took some time, as I think, for data protection authorities to enter into the world of certification, which has its own logics, its own I would say reference, ISO standards to take into account, and accreditation procedures to consider. So it took some time, but I have to say that for us, it was an opportunity to refine, to mature. It's like if you want a good wine or a good cheese, with time you can improve it, you can refine it, you can perfect it, polish it, and that took time. And then once the criteria were approved in 2022 by EDPB, there was a question of Article 43 for the accreditation. And then there were two roads ahead of us. We got the accreditation procedure for Italy quite quickly, I think early 23. But then we discussed with the National Accreditation Authority of Italy and said that we had fundamentally two options, either to stick to national accreditation and to move country by country. And we said, no, it's better to move directly to the European level. So we started engaging with European accreditation. And I would say, while with EDPB, we had to engage with, let's say, 27 plus 3 national authorities for data protection, and to ensure that everybody would feel comfortable with the criteria. When we moved to EA, we had over 50 authorities, because you have not only the EU, but you have other non-EU authorities which are involved in the process. And then you need to convince them to explain as to what is the GDPR certification versus order certification, because it's quite specific. And then it took time. And then it's only once we got the accreditation procedure approved by EA, European Accreditation, that certification body could start getting the formal accreditation. And this takes time again. And then once the accreditation, the certification body get the accreditation, now we have more and more certification body getting the accreditation or completing in the process of completing now the Article 43 accreditation. Then for clients to engage with a certification body, they need also some time to prepare for the certification. So to engage with a certification body to sign, which means that there is a sequence of multiple latency steps in the process, which seems to be a quite complex process. On the other hand, for the good news, I would say, for the applicants, the process looks quite simpler. They just apply to a certification body, or they look for an implementer, or they look online to get the information to prepare the certification, and then they get a certification body, and they go through the certification. We have the example of the first European seal was a company, they did the certification in 4 months, the whole process, which is not too long. It could be, and when we discuss with certification body, they say if an entity is really mature, it can even be faster, or it can take far more time. And then what we hear now from quite a number of the feedbacks we have from companies, we've seen across all over Europe, companies interested in the certification, and many are in the process now in getting and preparing their audits. So documenting, preparing all the information. But you have also some cases where there are companies which are ready to be certified, but the certification body do not have the Article 43 accreditation completed. So you have quite a number of factors. It's multifactorial. The good news, there is a strong interest from what we see. There's also a strong interest to also complete Article 46, which is under progress at EDPB, so for Europrivacy, but that takes time. And if you add one delay after another delay and after another delay, the resulting time frame is longer than initially planned. But again, with positive and negative in that, the negative is probably some companies which are frustrated not to already get their certificates delivered, because we know that some companies are working on preparing the certifications in several years. But on the other hand, I think it gives more time to really fine-tune a mechanism, an instrument whose purpose is to be highly trustable, is really to build trust, highly reliable, and we try to make it at the same time as efficient as possible in terms of process. But clearly, we are at the very beginning of a new journey. We are confident that it's only the beginning, but again, it's not a window dressing exercise. It's really something serious. And if you want to be certified, you need to demonstrate compliance with the GDPR. And the criteria are designed to really assess in a quite systematic manner the compliance with all the obligations of a data controller or a data processor.
Thank you, Sébastien. I hope everyone will see and listen to this history of certification in the GDPR. It was excellent. Thank you.
No, thank you. And thank you for joining. It's a great pleasure. And again, I have to say that the interactions with the different national data protection authorities through EDPB was a very important source of inspiration for us. I have to say that the initial version of the scheme that we had ready in 2018 and the version we have today are quite distinct. They evolved quite a lot. The process took time, but I would say, of course, we would have wished it to be faster, but at the same time, it enabled really to work on the quality and improving. And again, I like good wines, and I know that you don't make a good wine in a year. You need a little bit more time. You need to let it mature. You need it to the same for a good cheese or for good products. You need to have patience, dedications, resilience, perhaps, and perseverance for sure. But no, thank you very much for the comment. I don't know, maybe if I see we are already close, we have completed the hours, but let me see if we have any question in the chat or in the Q&A. Okay, yes, I see one question. I see a question from Sophia. Zoltan mentioned that Allianz audit was complicated because there were over 30 sub-processing activities. Were these 30 plus sub-processing activities also audited or only considered as part of the same 7 main processing activities which were granted the Europrivacy certification? So Zoltan, do you want, and maybe Zoltan and Philipp, maybe both, I'll let you answer this question.
Yes, this is a very good question because the Europrivacy audit aims to make the review processing by processing. So it was not 30 plus sub-processing activity, it was 7 processing activity, but over 30 sub-activity, which was in the same processing, but we recognized that in one processing activity, Allianz had sub-activities, and these were covered by the same processing activity, so under the same TOE, but we have to check case by case that following the checks and controls, that in these sub-activities, they are always compliant with the Europrivacy criteria.
Thank you very much, Zoltan. Philipp, would you like to say a few words about it? Because that's correct, that in the context of GDPR certification, we certify data processing activities, not a company as a whole. So we need to outline the target of evaluation. And this target of evaluation can be, in some cases, very simple or highly complex and involve quite a number of, again, of sub-processing activities. So, Philipp, would you like to say a few words about it?
Yeah, I mean, only to confirm, but when you can see we have a, processing activity, let's say you buy a car insurance, right? And, this is one, at the outset, one processing activity, but then they are all, the sub-processing, by our subsidiaries, by our vendors, And it's normal nowadays, you know, outsourced data processing, that there are many sub-processing. That's to be expected, of course, right? But everything has its own angle and had to be looked at, what Zoltan and team did very diligently.
No, thank you very much. And really, that's something quite important to notice, that once you define a target of evaluation for the certification, there are few restrictions. One, which is for me probably the most important one, that the target of evaluation can be easily communicated to the public, because then the public will expect that a certified data processing is really complying with the GDPR, which implies that there is also a reflection to be made on how to adequately outline and define the limits of your target of evaluation, so that it is meaningful for the public, for the third parties, it is meaningful for the applicant, and that within this perimeter, you really ensure that all the data processing which are under the control of the applicant are effectively assessed for their compliance with the GDPR. So it's a quite systematic, and but I would say at the same time, it means it's highly valuable for the third parties. And it is aligned with what is mentioned in Recital 100 of the GDPR and Article 42 of the GDPR, is to enable data subjects and other parties, B2B partners, to quickly assess if a data processing or a service, or I would say, yes, personal data processing is complying with the GDPR. And that's a very important element to bring transparency, to reduce the risks for all parties at the end of the day, because it reduces the risk for the applicants, for the data subject, but also for potential data controller, joint controllers, or other B2B relationship. It reduces the risk also, quite interestingly, for large companies, for also the shareholders, the investors. So indeed, at the end of the day, you realize that a single certification brings value to many different stakeholders. Of course, first one being the data subject, but also for all the other entities. And even potentially, I would say, maybe I will speak under Michael's control. It could, but that's a personal opinion, it could even bring value to the supervisory authority, in the sense that supervisory authorities are in charge of all data processing in their country, in their jurisdictions, which is, to be frank, an Herculean work. I mean, you think that a single company can have hundreds of data processing. If you consider that in a country you can have millions of companies, just imagine the volume of work that it represents. So we have probably some supervisory authorities who are heroes in the category, like Hercules, able to. But at the end of the day, having certification is a way to ensure that not only the supervisory authorities come to check the compliance, but that you can distribute a little bit the workload by encouraging companies to get third parties audits and verification of the compliance. But maybe Michael, do you want to say a few words about the volume of work that you face, and what could be the role of certification to distribute a little bit this level of guarantee for the data subject that their personal data are adequately processed in a given jurisdiction?
Yes, I completely agree to your assessment. When we have to exercise our tasks, we will look at the risk. No difference, and the risk is lower when we have a second supervisory authority, when we have a certification body. That means normally we will look at others. Normally. Sorry, Philip, if there is something coming, we will have to speak. But normally it will, of course, tell us that all the mechanisms we expect should be in place. And this is, again, the core advantage of this concept of regulated self-regulation. It anticipates a little bit the work we might normally have to do in another system.
Definitely. I think, again, as you mentioned, being certified, to be very clear, is not neither an immunity nor a guarantee that there will never be any issue, but it's, first of all, reduce a lot the risk for the applicants, because you really get a third-party validation to check that what you're doing is right, is correct. But the other element, I think, which is quite interesting, it's so not neutral when a company decides to embrace GDPR certification. It's a sign of strong commitment to compliance and personal data protection. It means that the company is really willing to engage and invest in ensuring and demonstrating compliance. And this is already a strong differentiator, I would say, as a data subject. If I have to choose among different insurance companies or different, and if I know that one of them is as certified, I will feel, even if it's subjective, I will, but there are objective elements, I will feel more confident. I will have the feeling that it's not just a self-statement, but that this service has every year third-party audit to control it. It's not just, again, it's really a commitment, a very strong indication of compliance. And I think this message is also a way to recognize and value the work of the DPO. Because again, often the DPOs are hidden. They are visible when there is an issue, and we don't see them when they are doing a wonderful work and that there is no issue. They become invisible, and that's a way also to recognize this work, I think. And I think it's not a chance if Philipp, like other DPOs, has decided to engage. I think there is also a willingness not just to say, okay, I do the minimum work, I try to just do the minimum, but I really, these are people, and that's my personal experience with many DPOs, they are formidable people who are really dedicated to the mission. It's not an easy one, as I mentioned, it's a challenging one. So when a DPO engages in certification, it's really a sign of commitment, of personal and institutional commitment, I would say. Excuse me, my subjective remark, but that's my personal view. I don't know, Philipp, if you want to add anything, or Michael, I think we are already completed the hours, or Zoltan. Maybe if you want.
Just other than saying thank you again to Europrivacy, Zoltan, for the help with the certification, and obviously to Michael as well. Great to have you as a regulator.
Thank you. Something I don't hear as often, and congratulations to everyone engaged in this project, and thank you for the time to discuss this overall issues that are really worse and that are something I hope we do more often in the future.
Thank you very much, Michael. Zoltan, would you like to say a few words?
Yeah, just thank you from my side as well. Thank you for Philipp and all of your team and staff for your collaboration. It was a really good job on your side, and we are looking forward for further certification, not just with Allianz but with others. We have some projects in the loop. So yeah, we're really positive in the future. Just to respond to Michael, that we have some positive views.
So thank you very much to all, and allow me last time a kudo to Allianz. Congratulations, it's a great achievement, and we're really very proud that Allianz is one of the first European, one of the first recipients of the European Data Protection Seal. So thank you to all, and again, congratulations, and I wish you an excellent evening, and thank you for your time too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a nice evening. Bye.